and welcome back to FAX News. My name is Jim and I'll be your host today. In today's news, water pollution takes the headlines, with the EPA rolling back safeguards and regulations on it. You may have a general idea of water pollution, but in today's segment, you're going to get a crash course into water pollution and learn a little bit more about it. First, we will discuss different types of general pollution sources. There are two different types of pollution sources, non-point and point. A point source of pollution can be traced to a single point or source. It is a well-defined point, such as a factory. A non-point source of pollution cannot be traced to a single entity. Some examples include a watershed or farmlands. In order to understand it better, here is a demonstration. You can think of non-point source pollution as being rained on, because you can't trace the rain back to a single point in the sky, because the sky is so big, it's a large region. But point source pollution would be like being sprayed by a hose, because you can find and trace back the point to the hose and find the water. Now, let's move on to water pollution and its effect on dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is oxygen that is dissolved into the water and is used by fish and plants that live in the water. It is essential for life, much like America's need to watch Bachelor in Paradise. A common water pollution problem occurs when large amounts of pollutants enter waterways from farming regions and wastewater treatment plants. Due to this, there is an increase in different nutrients, such as phosphorus and nitrogen, entering water bodies. This increase can lead to eutrophication. Now, what is eutrophication, you might ask? Well, eutrophication is a phenomenon in which there is greater growth of plants and algae in water bodies because of the increase in nutrient levels. Plants and algae require oxygen, so they create a biological oxygen demand, which is also called BOD. With the increase in nitrogen and phosphorus levels, these aquatic plants and algae are flourishing, and as a result, have increased the BOD levels of the water body. With a higher demand of oxygen, the aquatic plants and algae take in more dissolved oxygen. This in turn lowers the dissolved oxygen levels in the water. I hope now you have a better understanding of the effect of water pollutants on dissolved oxygen and its importance and role in aquatic ecosystems. Now, carrying on our crash course in water pollution, let's head over to Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I'm here to educate you. What will I be The camera's the wrong way? Oh. Thank you, Jim. I'm here to educate you. What will I be teaching you? Boom. Impacts of oil spills and plastics on the environment. Fact. Exxon Valdez oil spill killed around 250,000 birds. Also, oil spills can cause deprivation of sunlight, contaminate food sources, cause hypothermia, and other negative things. Sounds pretty scary now, huh? Let's move on to the plastics. Fact. 80% of plastic debris that goes into the ocean comes from urban runoff. The other 20% comes from landfills and ships. So what, you might ask? Well, the plastic causes choking and asphyxiation and is not biodegradable. So here's a helpful tip. Don't be dumb. Just help save our planet. Back to you, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim from FAX News, and today I'll be talking about endocrine disruptors. So endocrine disruptors are chemicals that affect a body's endocrine system. So these chemicals interfere with the body's hormones, which eventually can cause developmental, reproductive, brain, or immune problems. And these endocrine disruptors are also known to be negative to the environment, specifically through plants and animals. So endocrine disruptors are found in everyday products, which include plastic water bottles, containers, metal cans, detergents, and even pesticides. And they are known to get into the waterways when sewage systems or water treatment plants that contain water that is contaminated with pollutants like endocrine disruptors do not fully remove the contaminants from the water. Several examples of endocrine disruptors are polychlorinated biphenyls, also known as PCBs, polybrominated biphenyls, also known as PBBs, and dioxins. And another famous endocrine disruptor is DDT, which was researched by famous environmentalist Rachel Carson. So endocrine disruptors have several effects on animals. One of them is through birds. So in birds, they cause egg thinning, beak abnormalities, and disturb nesting behavior. In mollusks, they cause something called
imposex, where female mollusks will develop male genitalia, and endocrine disruptors affect fish in a similar manner. In fish, it causes feminization in male fish, so the male fish will develop female tissue and egg yolk protein. In plants, endocrine disruptors cause stunted plant growth and an uneven ratio of growth and stress hormones in the roots, so the plants are not able to grow correctly. And overall, endocrine disruptors are a detrimental water pollutant that affects human, animal, and plant health if it is not correctly removed from sewage systems or water treatment plants correctly. So next, Jim will be discussing persistent organic pollutants. So this is Jim from FAX News signing off.
So you ask, what are the effects of persistent organic pollutants on ecosystems, and biologically, how do they impact organisms? Well, POPs are organic chemicals that are able to cause negative health effects if they manage to bioaccumulate in an ecosystem. Well, Jim, want to know what bioaccumulation means? Bioaccumulation is the buildup of chemical concentrations in an organism, and at high enough concentrations, organisms can be affected with cancer, immune system suppression, and impaired neurological function. Individual organism safety is very important for the ecosystem because each organism provides some kind of service. If this service is hindered and the biodiversity decreases, the ecosystem could become less stable. Biodiversity will always have a direct impact on the stabilization of an ecosystem. The more species that exist, the more stable the environment will be in case a species goes extinct. If there are not many species existing already, a species going extinct could hurt the whole ecosystem since many other organisms relied on that one species. These species, if important enough, could also be called keystone species, meaning that they are vital for the survival of the ecosystem. A few examples of POPs are DDT, aldrin, chlordane, dieldrin, and endrin. If you remembered how DDT worked, DDT would contaminate the water and become ingested by plankton and small fish. Then tons of large fish would
Eat tons of small fish.
and birds of prey would eat tons of big fish, causing the DDT to have a high enough concentration to harm the bird shells and endanger the species. During this time, the ppm would go from 0.00003 ppm to 25 ppm in birds of prey. That's a huge and damaging increase. Thanks, Jim, and back to you, Jim.
Well, Jim, I can tell you that I know the 7 people watching at home are just dying to know how the water they drink gets treated. Water treatment has 3 steps, and we know scientists are the best at naming things, which is why the 3 steps are called primary, secondary, and tertiary. Creative, right? Primary begins the wonderful water treatment journey by being held in a setting tank. The water rests in the setting tank and the heavy solids sink to the bottom, and the liquid and other light pollutants remain at the top. After a period of time that varies anywhere from a few days to a few weeks depending on the water treatment center, the solids are dragged out from the bottom and the liquid is pumped to secondary treatment. Now, secondary treatment actually has 3 different methods and is the most in-depth treatment of them all. Hold on your horses as I walk you through these absolutely riveting methods. Biofiltration is the first, most expensive, but most effective method at filtering the water. It's in the name and everything. Scientists, there's a reason they're not English majors. Biofiltration uses a variety of filters to push the water through and get out bacteria, pollutants, and small particles of metals and other stuff like that. It's straightforward. Now, aeration is the coolest method. Aeration is a process that introduces pure oxygen into the water in a carefully pressurized tank. The pure oxygen is pumped out in tiny little bubbles, probably a bit smaller than the bubbles in my seltzer. The bubbles agitate the water, and the pollutant in them bond with the solids and dissolved metals and gases and other chemicals as it brings it to the very top of the water, or bonds with the pollutants in the form of a gas. The gas and the surface of the water are filtered out, and the clean water at the bottom is moved on. Now, the hard part of aeration is knowing if this glass is full of pool water or seltzer. It's seltzer, but according to Jim in the studio, they taste the same. Now, Jim wouldn't know good seltzer if it hit him in the face. Last but not least, for the secondary stage, is oxidation ponds, which is the definition of ye old-fashioned way. Basically, they put it in nature, typically in a warm climate, and let nature filter it. Algae, sunlight, and anaerobic bacteria do the hard work over the process of a few weeks to a few months, depending on the temperature of the climate. That was an oxymoron, but hey, I'm a news reporter, not a scientist. Last but not least, tertiary is a series of smaller and smaller filters designed to catch every last solid in the water. And the water is often treated with neutralizing chemicals, as well as small amounts of chlorine to kill bacteria and minerals for taste. Did you know that there's fluoride in the water in the US? It's to help strengthen your teeth. Why? Because in my opinion, the government knows you don't floss. Anyway, thanks for watching my segment. Back to you, Jim.
Dose response curve describes the magnitude of the response of an organism as a function of exposure to a stimulus or stressor after a certain exposure time. LD50 measures the dosage of a poison that will kill half of the population, and it is calculated by testing the product's acute and oral toxicity against lab rats. During testing, a sample of the product is force-fed to multiple healthy rats, and after a predetermined time, the mortality is tallied and used to calculate LD50.
Now, one person still watching at home, thank you for watching this week's segment on water pollution. We hope you learned a little bit more about it and the importance of keeping our water bodies clean. Remember to tune into FAX News to get all the facts. Thanks and have a great day.
Yeah, no, we're gonna fail.